So Karmapa may have been short, but his salient characteristic was his giant, roaring Lion of Dharma-like presence.
He was a living Buddha. Everybody just fell in love with him.
His Holiness the 16th Karmapa was born in Tibet in 1924. At the age of 2, he was recognized as the reincarnation of the previous Karmapa. 5 years later, he entered the monastery and began his spiritual training.
His Holiness the Karmapa is the head of one of the 4 lineages of Tibetan Buddhism, the Kagyu lineage.
And devotion. And so the teacher is very important.
According to the teachings of the Buddha, the way to enlightenment and the end of suffering is through right conduct and the negation of desire.
His Holiness was very much the epitome of the realization of that path. He was a living Buddha.
In 1950, when the Karmapa was only 26 years old, China invaded Tibet.
Karmapa foresaw the invasion, and not just the Chinese would invade or take over part of Tibet, but that they would try to wipe out Buddhism.
Hundreds of thousands of Tibetans were killed and 6,000 monasteries destroyed. After unsuccessful attempts to negotiate with the Chinese, the Karmapa decided to leave.
He left Tibet with a couple mule trains of his monks and some of the monastery treasures, relics that are 1,000 years old.
In 1966, the Karmapa and his followers established a new seat for the lineage at Rumtek Monastery in northern India, preserving the legacy for future generations.
If you go to Kathmandu, you could probably go and find someone who teaches Westerners. And then I heard the great news that the Karmapa was coming.
In 1973, Das met the Karmapa while studying at a monastery in the Himalayas.
There was an opportunity to go up one by one and get blessings by him. There's a picture from that day showing my big jufro from behind and beard, and Karmapa's radiant, sun-like face beaming at me. Like, I just felt so accepted and welcomed and loved.
In the 1970s, the Karmapa left India to go on a series of world teaching tours.
He was the first Karmapa to travel around the world, not just like a 3-week tour, but like 3, 4, 5 months.
Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who was an early pioneer in bringing Tibetan Buddhism to the West, introduced the Karmapa to America.
Immediately, you feel like him sort of stepping out of this ageless tradition into the modern world of cars and skyscrapers.
Derek Kalini was a student of Trungpa's at the time.
What the Karmapa did for those of us that were students of Trungpa Rinpoche, it gave us this idea of the vastness of the tradition that he came from, so that it was not just us in this little community, our little world, but we were then joining this huge family of Tibetan Buddhist practitioners. Most Westerners at that time knew Tibetan Buddhism as basically Shangri-La. This mystical place filled with magical lamas, very esoteric. So he comes right out of that world and dispels your image of it as being Shangri-La. Seeing him go up onto the stage was just like, yes, it's true. You know, everything I've read in these books can actually happen. In the inner world of the Karmapa, although he was actually not that tall, he would just fill up the room with his presence. It was like this light. It's like this beaming light.
One of the duties of the Karmapa was to perform the black crown ceremony.
He puts on this crown, which is this incredible relic that goes back hundreds of years, studded with all sorts of jewels. Here you see His Holiness dissolve into the mind of the Absolute Buddha. Just the scene of the black crown ceremony is said to give one the possibility of attaining liberation on the spot.
On one of his American tours, the Karmapa founded a monastery in Woodstock, New York.
Somebody had given some land to His Holiness to be a seat in the United States. So he drove up to Woodstock, New York to see the place and spend some time there, and picked a spot for the actual monastery to be built there, which is now what you see there today. It is a totally traditional Tibetan monastery.
Toward the end of his U.S. tour, the Karmapa began showing signs of exhaustion.
He had contracted Bell's palsy. The right side of his face is sort of limp, but it was accompanied by a sort of weariness that was unusual for him.
In December 1980, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer. He sought treatment at a hospital outside Chicago.
Underwent a lot of treatments there, but nothing worked.
His Holiness died on November 5th, 1981.
I like to think he was born in the East and he died in the West to wrap the whole world in his liberating, enlightening Buddha activity.
His existence was like the proof of enlightenment. The myth of Tibetan Buddhahood is actually true, and here's a living embodiment of it.
Karmapa.